In tonight's Political Insider, the Biden for president trial balloon. No question it's been floated. The Veep isn't doing anything to stem the speculation. He's preparing for a 2016 White House bid. In fact, he recently added fuel to the fire. For more, we turn to our guest tonight on Capitol Insider. Kevin Cirilli is a reporter with The Hill, and he is our guest right now. Kevin, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Dave.
Over the weekend, Mr. Biden that is, flew from his Delaware home back to the capital city for an impromptu meeting with Senator Elizabeth Warren, a shining star among the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. She hasn't said she'd seek a presidential nomination, but the question is, what were she and the vice president talking about?
Well, there's a lot of speculation today that Vice President Biden met with Senator Elizabeth Warren to perhaps discuss potentially running for president. Now, there's 2 points that I would make. The first is that it comes as Senator Bernie Sanders, the self-described socialist from Vermont, has been surging recently in the polls.
Yeah.
But the second point that I would make is that it comes as Hillary Clinton, the Democratic frontrunner, has really been showing her vulnerabilities as a candidate as this email server continues to dog her campaign.
Dog her campaign, and let's be honest here, hasn't been particularly well handled by her campaign and the candidate herself.
You know, that's a really great point, and I think that there are a lot of unanswered questions about this. In particular, exactly, was this server wiped clean? She's going to have to testify on this in October. So the bottom line is that the schedule for this just continues to be prolonged. And I think that the question for Vice President Biden is, would he be able to put together a winning coalition? Because a lot of folks say, hey, wait a minute, Hillary Clinton is really strong in terms of the Democratic primary. She's got a lot of money. Again, a socialist, not really someone who many think would have much viability in terms of defeating her in a primary, but put them up against in a general, and that's where things get interesting, especially if these trustworthy numbers continue to dip for former Secretary Clinton.
You mentioned organization. Let's talk a little bit about that. Mr. Biden has hired a new communications director for vice president, Kate Bedingfield, and if that name sounds familiar, it should. She held a key position in the John Edwards 2008 presidential campaign and has had White House jobs. The VP's office insists Bedingfield is only there to do the work within the scope of the VP's current position. But just how important is this new hire, Kevin?
Well, I think it's just the latest in a sign that we're seeing that perhaps the vice president is taking a serious look at running for president. You know, he also vacationed in South Carolina, and you and I both know that everything is political in Washington, and including where you vacation in that all-important South Carolina primary state. You know, he would be getting in a little bit late, so the infrastructure already there for Hillary Clinton and to some extent Senator Sanders in Iowa. People like Martin O'Malley still trying to catch on. But again, Iowa has been a struggle for Hillary Clinton. And if this scandal with the email continues, you know, Democrats are going to have to look at a viable alternative in order to keep the White House.
As a native South Carolinian, I can tell you there are plenty of great places to vacation there, but I am also struck by the incredible irony that Mr. Biden would go down to spend time in the Lowcountry just on his own. Let's talk a little bit more about a timetable here, because it is getting late, and there is some indication, some reports, that maybe Mr. Biden would wait until perhaps October. Is that too late?
Well, that would be just around the time of the first Democratic presidential debate. I was interviewing former Governor O'Malley in Iowa just the other week, and he had raised concerns that he thought the DNC officials, including the Clintons and DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, were tilting the odds in favor of Clinton, as goes into many Democrats' fears of having a coronation. And so I think that right around that time, especially, you know, if Hillary Clinton is testifying with this scandal and the FBI investigating her email server, that would create an opening. What's he have to lose? He has the name recognition. It's that infrastructure and that ground game that I think would be the biggest challenge and hurdle in getting that early money. But hey, he has a strong showing at the first debate. It's anyone's guess what happens.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit, Kevin, if we can. The economy right now, and of course today, the big story, the stock markets once again, a huge sell-off at the open, a little bit of a recovery, but then the market still down, not just triple digits, but middling triple digits in the forefront of the 2016 race. Republican frontrunner Donald Trump tweeted, "Markets are crashing, all caused by poor planning and allowing China and Asia to dictate the agenda. This could get very messy." Donald's leading in the polls, especially when it comes to the handling of economic issues. Does this play right into his wheelhouse?
I think it does. I think that he has long criticized China for currency manipulation, and I think he's playing into the real anger that really is palpable at this point, more than 6 years outside of the economic collapse in 2008. And so I think that the huge issue number one in this election is going to be which candidate is able to really tap into that with policy proposals to get this economy moving again. The point that I would raise, though, is that all of this is happening as Federal Reserve policymakers are going to be meeting in Jackson Hole to have their annual conference, and we're just around the corner, if you will, from when many Fed watchers are expecting Federal Reserve officials to increase interest rates, which have been at 0% since the economic collapse. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I think that this is, again, the big story heading into the election, and of course, in addition, obviously, to foreign policy.
And in fact, the Fed had, it was thought, perhaps been moving toward a September rise, maybe even a tiny incremental rise in those short-term interest rates. Does that change their thinking a little bit, Kevin?
Great question. And there are a lot of, I was just on a conference call earlier today with some economists who are insinuating that this is evidence that perhaps we should see a delay. But again, most economists, as you alluded to, are expecting that September rate increase. A lot of tough questions for Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen that she's going to have to answer, particularly as the unemployment rate continues to be at 5.3%. And in addition to that, the labor participation rate is at an all-time low. The actual number of folks they're counting for the unemployment rate, an all-time low at a rate we haven't seen since 1978. You don't have to know the numbers, though, to know that people are really frustrated at the pace of this economic recovery.
Frustrated and suddenly, I think, very worried, too, about their 401ks and things like that. Kevin Cirilli is a reporter for The Hill, and he's been our guest. Kevin, many thanks.
Thank you.